had to protect my children.
Welcome back to another edition of Enough Said. My name is Dan Barreiro, joined as always by Justin Gaard and Lori Fisher to get us started to try to put some sort of context or perspective on a story that almost, well, does still seem unconscionable. Hi, Lori.
Hi guys, it does feel impossible to do that, but we'll try. 19 children and 2 teachers killed at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas, when a gunman walked into the school through an unlocked door with an assault-style rifle. Texas authorities broke down that timeline earlier today. The active shooter entered the school just after 11:30, but wasn't killed by officers until around 12:50. There are serious questions about how so many officers, 19 of them, ended up outside the classroom door but didn't bust in. Police also wouldn't say today why the police resource officer wasn't on campus at the time. A lot of mistakes made. 19 kids killed, 2 teachers. Dan?
You know, anytime we have this kind of tragedy, the Monday morning quarterbacking starts almost from the moment the tragedy is revealed. And some of it, I think, can be unfair. Some of it can be premature. Some of it can be, well, it's sort of easy to say after the fact. But it's almost, Justin, as if and Lori, we're the nightmare as of today, as of Friday, is being relived.
Yeah.
Because now we have more than online anecdotal evidence that there are serious questions about the way law enforcement try to react to this thing. We have confirmation, it sounds like, from the people in charge of the number of blunders and mistakes. And so that video that indicated you have terrified parents who are saying to the 19 officers in front of them, why aren't you going in? What's going on? You now have confirmation that they made assumptions based on we don't know what, that it was a barricade situation. And so they didn't do the one thing that maybe would have made a difference. We don't know how many lives would have been saved. We don't know if any would have been saved. But this is absolutely a second nightmare on top of the heinous nature of the crime, the terroristic crime itself.
Well, every day, every update seems like another gut punch, and Friday was the biggest gut punch after the original day, right? And we talked about on the radio these videos that we were seeing kind of being leaked out, and people were talking about, and we said, they have to account for them. The authorities need to account for this because something doesn't seem like it's adding up. But there might be an explanation for why there were officers just outside while other police were allegedly in. Now that we've heard the explanation, it's remarkably worse, if that was even possible. And not even to mention, there are kids inside that classroom where there are 19 police officers out in the hallway calling 911 multiple times. One girl called about 6 times in 40 minutes, each time basically giving an updated shooting count, an updated who's still alive count, and please send police in here as soon as possible. It makes no sense to me. You know, this school had a plan theoretically for a situation like this, like a lot of them do. The officer is not even on campus. We know about the door, which is a tragic mistake by a teacher to leave that thing propped up, as innocent as that might seem at the time. That was obviously a big reason why he got in there. But they had a plan. They had a SWAT team in town. And when they were called upon, they absolutely blew it. That's the second tragedy on top of the first one, which of course was awful in the first place.
None of it might have mattered, but we'll never know.
Right.
The point is, they didn't, on several levels, the folks at the school, law enforcement, based on now what law enforcement is telling us, they never gave themselves or those kids a chance with the way they went about this thing. It is, as I said, it's like we're living the nightmare, as you mentioned. It's sort of ratcheted up each day, but this has taken it to a whole new level, and a million questions are going to have to be answered. And it sounds like we're not going to like any of the answers, and I don't blame the parents if they're at a point now where they're going, where exactly are you going to convince me that my child had even a chance today in a horrible situation? We should talk also, and I know we have, I think, some time to do this, about the ramifications of, okay, what do we
exactly
do? What do we do now? Who's at fault, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a big believer that there is no magic wand answer, although I would start with keep the doors closed if part of your plan is at least make it tougher for the bad guy to get in.
30 seconds.
But on the issue of the governor being at a podium and doing the old, hey, everybody, we've all got to come together. Where the governor and I think it's the lieutenant governor of the state of Texas are frauds is they've had several tragedies in that state, after which each time they've said, in fact, the lieutenant governor, let me read the quote after one of the shooting tragedies, that he was going to be willing to take an arrow from the NRA. They were going to finally toughen the standards up, make some changes. That was his big, tough quote.
Right.
You know what the toughest thing is they did after that in the legislature, with apparently the approval of the governor and the lieutenant governor? They allowed Texans to carry handguns openly in public without going through any training or any permits. That was an example of standing tall to the NRA and saying enough. Gutless. They deserve that title, even if we don't know that any one of these changes would have had any impact on changing this tragedy.
Well, along those lines, you and I agree on this. Everything should be on the table. Gun control in some form should be on the table. Mental health, which, by the way, Texas is awful at in terms of giving support to the people that need it, that should be on the table. If you want to harden schools even more than we have done, that should also be on the table. This kid was bullied in middle school. That should be remembered. I mean, everything should be on the table. Might not help one thing at a time, but everything should be looked at in a scenario like this.
And we all have young kids, so our hearts go out to everybody who lost someone. It's been 2 years since George Floyd was murdered on Memorial Day outside Cub Foods in Minneapolis. Since his death, there's been protests to create change, including pushes for police reform. But has anything changed in that time, or just a lot of talk that has faded, Dan?
Well, that's the key question. And I know in the black community, there are a number of people who feel like not enough has changed. I like to think that the trial itself of Chauvin and the result does potentially start to send a message that, at least to that extent, things have a chance to change. But it's more complicated than that. And where I think the tragedy for me is, I think the thread's been lost a little bit in that a righteous movement that starts with the George Floyd story gets, to a certain extent, railroaded by the whole defund the police concept. And as a result, sadly, often in minority communities, the same folks who felt the most wronged by what the Floyd story represented get nailed again, because law enforcement, for whatever reason, fewer cops, pouting, mailing it in, afraid of what kind of reaction they're going to get, there were even greater crime situations in those areas, in those parts of the community. And so, because we're hearing all the polls indicate that many blacks believe they need more cops. They want better cops. They want cops who do things the right way. But we have this double whammy of, because of the defund thing, I think, that we've lost the thread of exactly what we were trying to do here. And in doing so, we've created situations in which the crime situation in these same communities has those individuals crying for a different sort of help.
30 seconds,
well,
Justin.
I'll also add that there needs to be a lot of follow-up on what the leaders are saying. And we even learned in the interim here in the 2 years in terms of the no-knock warrant, when Mayor Fry and everybody was talking big, like, we're getting rid of them. Well, we learned that wasn't the case, right? Because Amir Locke, died because of one of those, in part, in downtown Minneapolis. So there's, I think it depends on who you ask if things have actually gotten better, as you mentioned. And I know there's a great deal of frustration on, just even access to get the answers that people are looking for here locally.
Enough said.
Our leaders are doing interviews with Vogue and the New York Times and everything that goes along with that. And there's people on the ground reporting here locally that can't get 2 minutes to get some of these, I think, pretty legitimate questions answered on what exactly
including,
has
we should
changed.
say real quick, there was just another major study out confirming once again the disproportionate number of times that minorities are stopped.
Exactly.
That still is a big part of what has to be dealt with and reconciled, and it clearly has not been.
Next up, Dodgers pitcher Trevor Bauer is fighting his 2-year suspension from the MLB. He's accused of violating the league's domestic violence policy for off-field sexual misconduct. Meanwhile, Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson is expected to get a 6 to 8 game ban for his alleged abuse of women. Neither men charged in the cases. Do you think the NFL will change its mind due to optics with baseball serving a harsher punishment, Justin?
Well, Watson's lawyer will argue and has argued that the Bauer case should have nothing to do with the Watson case. Of course, that's what he should. But in the real world, that's what the lawyer should argue, that on behalf of his client. But in the real world, as we talked about on the radio, I think they are under pressure to do that. And frankly, given a lot of the allegations and just the sheer volume of it, 6 games, 8 games, that feels pretty light. Now, the Cleveland Browns have even kind of structured the contract, as cynical as this is, to allow for him to miss more games and still get some of his money. That can be a whole different discussion. But you think about how many women have come forward. You think about the HBO Real Sports thing that just aired, and you got to figure, man, 6 games feels awful light. Not saying he needs to go away forever, because, again, we have to remember, no criminal charges. 2 different grand juries looked at this and weren't able to move it forward, so that should be factored in. But I definitely think the Bauer thing, in the court of public opinion, which is now more important than ever, will matter to this one. The
timing is interesting, and that's why a lot of people have said, again, Harden's right. I mean, technically speaking, and the cases aren't the same at all. They're very different cases. Troubling allegations in both cases, I might add, to put it mildly. But I think the reality is the NFL, let's face it, they ratcheted things up after the Ray Rice deal.
Only after they saw the video.
Exactly. Yep. And only after they got hammered, they felt like, we got to rewrite all this stuff. We've got to really we got to dig deep. And
30 seconds.
But the point is, that's what it took. And so I think the public, perception here, the public relations part of it is big. And I don't know what the right answer is.
Right.
But again, reading the allegations and the number of people involved, if he's playing after 6 games, it almost feels like it's meaningless, and Cleveland will feel like, hey, we made a heck of a deal.
Right.
And I that feeling doesn't sit well in my stomach.
Coming up, Vikings, Twins, Wolves, social media, LYNX, so much more.
Yes, I'm learning a new system, but I know what Justin Jefferson can do. I know what Irv Smith can do. I know what Brian O'Neill can do. I know what Dalvin can do. And so that's kind of fun, because you feel like, hey, we're all learning this together, but we've also played some meaningful snaps together too. And we've got some bank reps and some good memories on these fields together.
Welcome back to Enough Said. The second week of Vikings OTAs has wrapped up. I always like to explain that's organized team activities, for those who may not know what OTA stands for. With a new quarterback Kirk Cousins has to learn another offense, but as you heard, he sounds confident with all the talent surrounding him. And I know it's still May. We're less than 3 months away from preseason games. A lot of pressure this season with a new coach, a new GM, rookies. What's the vibe, Dan?
State Fair's right around the corner, too.
It sure is.
Isn't the State Fair summer event this weekend?
Exactly right. Yeah. I saw a bunch of stuff
State
on that on
Fair's
Fox 9
basically
this morning.
year-round now.
That's right.
Different ways.
They should leave it open.
Here's I'll try to manufacture something Vikings related that
I've got a conspiracy on mine. Lori keeps bringing this up too.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, all right. I'll be curious to hear about that. Here's the new inside scoop, so to speak, on the new offense and number 8, Kirk Cousins, is the possibility that this coaching staff, these great offensive genius minds, are going to give him more latitude when it comes to changing the play.
Oh.
And I don't know if that's true, but I'm fascinated by it, because there's no doubt that Cousins, despite the fact that he's a veteran quarterback, was given very little freedom to change plays. And the question we've had all along under Mike Zimmer was, why is that? Is it they don't trust him, which is what you heard behind the scenes? Or was it he didn't really even want it because he's not even sure what he would do with it? So if indeed you buy the premise, because, here Cousins talking about, everything's new, I got to learn all this new stuff.
Yeah.
He's going to have a chance to prove that he ain't a robot. And it may be a great move. If indeed he has that freedom, it may be a great move. It's either going to be, it might be the one thing that elevates him, or also it might be the one thing that further exposes him, and we find out exactly why the Vikings, under Mike Zimmer, had trepidation about saying to Kirk, just wing it. Just run the play. Change the play as often as you want to do, just like an Aaron Rodgers might or a Tom Brady does.
Well, that's what I'm glad you brought up those 2 names, because what do you think the percentage of NFL quarterbacks are that are allowed to change the play? It seems to me it should be 100. We're not talking about 4th graders
30
here.
seconds.
They all watch film for 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have some of the answers to the test. So it always surprises me, like this is like a big threshold that we get to cross here. So I hope he does get that opportunity, and we'll see how he does with it. If it's terrible, then I guess maybe we have
our answer.
We probably have our answer, even though I'm a bigger Cousins guy than you on the future with this whole thing. But Lori, is the Packers-Vikings game 3:25? Is that on Fox 9?
It is.
Okay.
Is it? So is
Enough
that the
said.
real reason?
Well, we're doing a 6-month ramp up to
But
make
wait,
sure
what did you
everybody
say
knows.
I keep bringing up? I
The
missed. I was
Vikings.
talking to Director Leo.
The
I
Vikings.
can't bring up the Vikings?
Well, like you
Well, no,
said,
it's
we're
just-
3
it's-
months away.
yeah,
I mean, we're
from-
making it up about Kirk Cousins.
Again, it's a year-round story.
No,
The
they
Vikings
want you to
don't
believe
stop.
that. They want the draft, yes, free agency, which is coming up, or was. That was.
If that game wasn't on Fox, would you even be mentioning this?
Well,
Just
possibly.
a reminder.
Okay.
That's Sunday, 3:25.
Right
You can
here on
watch the
Fox
game
9.
on Fox 9. We're going to drill it into you all summer.
The Twins are in a series against the Kansas City Royals and then head to Detroit to face the Tigers starting on Monday. The Twins' 6-game winning streak, though, did end with Detroit on Wednesday. The Twins, though, still first in their division. Keep saying it every Friday night, Dan.
Yeah, they're having some problems carrying forward with some offense lately.
Yeah.
And now the new concern is whether we're playing Buxton too much, even though we're barely playing him, because he's having trouble hitting the ball, right?
Yes.
I'll still, I think he's probably going to come out of this okay. We said this before, we'll say it again. They're in a stretch. In fact, they've got 5 more games next week with Detroit, where they really probably should make hay and maybe need to make hay unless they show us down the road after that when they're starting to play some better teams, including the almost unbeatable Bronx Bombers.
Yeah, the Yankees are coming to town.
The
in a few
Yankees are
weeks.
not just, usually they often beat up on us.
Yep.
Now they're beating up on everybody else as well. So we'll see if they take further advantage. It seems like we've been playing Detroit and Kansas City forever.
Well, that's the beauty of the American League Central. We've seen it now for a couple of decades, going all the way back to Gardy. But what I like about this is it gives us another litmus test or another test of the new regime and the organization in general, that at the end of July, what are you going to do? You always tell us that when you think you're in a contending window, you have the freedom and the ability to go fortify and go make some moves to help out the ball club. They're going to have that opportunity, right? Unless they completely melt down for the next month, they're going to have it. So whether it's getting another starter, I know there's some bullpen people are already looking at which teams are in trouble and who might be trying to sell off. Your Cubs come up in that with a couple of relievers.
Cubs are dreadful.
So let's see. I always like the opportunity to say, you show us. You tell us you have this ability. You have this willingness. Let's see if that really comes up in July.
Well, you know what they're going to say?
Well, we're getting some people back from injury.
Well, yeah,
and the
they're going to
price
say
is too high.
Maeda, Tommy John guy, might be ready to help
30
us
seconds.
starting in August. They're going to say, what better acquisition could we make via trade? You're 100% right. I mean, what I will give them is their defense is better.
Yes, very much.
That's a sustainable way to win, I think. And they're not constantly relying on home runs, although lately they're offensively challenged across the board.
And again, Vikings-Packers, 3:25, Fox 9, and I'm sure we'll have lots of pregame coverage leading up to that game and postgame coverage as well.
Yeah.
Twins-Rockies, Saturday, June 24th. It's a 6 o'clock first pitch. That's also on Fox 9.
Thank you.
We'll remind you.
Okay,
so that
real
means
quick.
Buxton's got to play that game, right?
Real quick, you guys talked about this last week, and it came true. The Wolves hired Tim Connolly to be the team's next president. The deal, 5 years, $40 million, some ownership equity. He comes from the Golden Nuggets. The big headline this week, as well as Karl Anthony Towns made the All-NBA third for the second time.
Yeah.
I can't get my words out.
You got it.
You guys just take it
Well,
away.
and Wolves fans should be happy about that if you're a fan of Cat and you were worried about him like forcing his way out of town. I've never worried about that as much, even though that typically happens to us, because now he can make over the next 6 years, basically $279 million. It's some absurd number about that, so that's good. And as we said last week, the Conley deal, the more I read out of Denver, as you recall, I was kind of like, what are we doing here? Is this a top 5 guy?
You were way too skeptical.
Top 7 guy? Well, then I did some due diligence, as Rick Spielman would like to say. And you look at the reaction of Denver fans, they're bummed to lose this guy. They liked how this guy operated. They liked specifically how he drafted. They liked the coach that he hired. That he just had a good way about him. Now he's coming into historically one of the most dysfunctional organizations in the history of sports, where
can he overcome it?
Good basketball people have come to have their careers short-circuited, including, by the way, the last time we took a big swing like this, Tom Thibodeau, who then took a big swing with Jimmy Butler, struck out. We know how that ended, but this is the new guys, as we said last week, are not here to mess around. They are not worried about feelings. They are not going to slow cook this thing. They want to microwave this thing as quickly as possible and keep contending.
In flyover country, it is indeed refreshing for us to be on the other end of this kind of story, instead of having to play the part of poor, poor, pitiful us. And why can't we keep a guy like that? And why aren't we willing to pay the kind of money that they're doing it?
Huge
It's
money.
a big move. It's a major league move. It's probably worth mentioning, though, the other big swing and miss involving a big name. I think you were real young at the time. I don't know if you were born. Detroit Pistons general manager Jack McCloskey.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Who led that team to titles.
Yeah.
By the time we got him, we thought we had something because at least he had a resume. It was a disaster here with him.
He didn't have Isaiah Thomas with him?
He didn't have Isaiah
Bill
Thomas.
Laimbeer, Dennis Rodman.
No, he had none of those big names.
Joe
Dumars, etc. But there are pieces for Tim Connelly to work with here.
Yep.
And that's where you got to think there's at least a shot for this to go the right direction.
Welcome back to Enough Said. It is lightning round time. The Lynx are 2-6 now, beating the New York Liberty on Tuesday. They play the Los Angeles Sparks on Sunday night at home. Justin.
Much needed victory the other night. Congratulations in order, by the way, for Nafisa Collier. They did, she and her fiance had their baby,
yes.
I think, within the last 24 hours. So congratulations to them. And yeah,
I'd say get back on the court.
I wondered.
How long?
Something called maternity leave, Dan.
I wondered if you would go there. Yeah, there's a season. Yeah,
that's a joke, ladies and gentlemen.
Everybody
calm down. It's a joke. Don't email Lori.
Put the baby in the Bjorn and.
Well,
yeah. I'm sure they've got great child care services.
For sure.
Yeah.
Next up, actor Ray Liotta is dead at 67 years old. He's most known for his roles in Goodfellas and Field of Dreams. He passed away in his sleep while filming in the Dominican Republic. No foul play is suspected. Dan.
Another guy you can't imagine dead. In all honesty, you know what I mean? He had so much juice to him on camera, so much voltage. It's impossible to believe that he's gone. And I think that's why he was such an effective actor, and also why he was such a popular actor.
People loved working with him, and the eyes don't match the personality that he had in real life.
In real life.
You know how you always hear like, oh, people are meaner than they are in real life, or like how they look. You look at him. That's why he played a mobster. I mean, that's why you could play a gangster. And Shoeless Joe Jackson, but everybody loved working with him. And Shoeless Joe, Goodfellas.
What movie was that from?
Field of Dreams, one of the best sports movies of all time.
One of the most overrated sports movies.
That's not what you thought originally.
After weeks of testimony, the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard defamation case is coming to an end. It started April 11th.
So soon?
Jurors need to decide if Depp should get $50 million from Heard. Depp claims Heard's 2018 op-ed piece on domestic abuse derailed his career. It's been a wild trial, to say the least. Justin.
Well, here's my question. I have watched very little of this. Lori, how are you going to fill the time in your day when this trial is finally over? Are you going to wait for the mini-series? Are you going to wait for the Netflix recap? Because every time I've come here, there's like one little TV doing news on Fox, and then there's 55 that have the Depp trial.
I'll tell you a secret. I'm actually sick of it. I'm over it now.
Well, I should hope so.
That's because you wouldn't stop watching.
I should hope so.
Okay, finally, I want to.
Domestic abuse, serious issue.
It's not funny.
Yes.
No, not at all.
Funny,
actually,
but I will say this: if the two individuals at the center of this thing were not as beautiful as they are, would anybody be paying attention to it?
No.
Enough said.
No. Researchers, though, and talking about social media, too, researchers from the University of Washington found we lose track of time and reality while browsing social media. Go figure.
How much should we pay them for that?
The solution? Limit your use.
Let me guess. Less?
Less.
Interesting.
What a shocking revelation.
But have you ever started scrolling and you're like, oh my gosh, it's 4 o'clock?
No.
Yes.
No.
But I mean, the point is, how is that?
No.
It's one of those studies, Dan.
Intuitive? I mean, what? So this just confirms the obvious.
Count your calories and you'll lose weight.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
Eat
enough
less,
said.
work out more.